Making bucks. All right,
Making bucks, getting fresh air.
Let's start our show. Wait a minute. Why is our show starting? I don't understand what happened to my really great intro. So we will go ahead and start our show now, and I'm going to bring it in as soon as I can. But this is Off Day with Ballpark Nation. I'm Jim Christopher. Andy Tom Cheston's here. Andy, we've got some really great news to talk about the Astros. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to play the intro that I thought was playing as our intro now. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Very excited, Andy, for the new change for the Astros. Bringing in what?
Anime Jim and Anime Andy are twinks. You know that, right?
The best part is when I put that into the thing to draw it, I said, make this banner, make us MAGA. I'm not MAGA, manga.
Oh,
not manga, not MAGA. Make us manga, but not racist. That was my thing. I'll play it again in a minute when we get done about him, but very excited. Andy, you and I have actually been talking about the Astros getting involved in the Japanese market for a while. It's obviously not the first Japanese player the Astros have had, but to go in and outbid the Dodgers and the Yankees for Tatsui Imai, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Overall, just from a pitching perspective, all of a sudden it feels like you've got your number 2 starter.
I think it depends on what the Astros are able to do with him and how susceptible he is or open he is to learning new things. And he's saying all the right things, so I don't have any reason to doubt it. What the projections have been is that he would be a solid number 3 in Major League Baseball, primarily because prior to last year, his walk rate has been really high, even relative to the league that he was playing in Japan. And so that, concerns some scouts. That is part of the reason maybe his market wasn't as great as some of the other pitchers who've come through in recent years. But, we put a lot of faith in the Astros pitching lab, and I think this is another situation just like Mike Burrows with the correct, a little correction on pitch selection and situational pitching. I think that this is a big, big boon. And it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way because
is it a double-edged samurai sword?
You're going to really enjoy this way too much. Because of the nature of his contract having those opt-outs, if he does what I think the Astros pitching lab can get him to do, he's probably back in free agency next year.
Yeah.
But you enjoy the 1 year because Lord knows what's going to happen with baseball in 2027. Maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's very typical of our fan base to be so worried about the opt-outs now. If he's good enough to opt out, you probably had a deep playoff run.
This is also the same fan base who was mad at Jim Crane for not giving Alex Bregman the same opt-out contract last offseason.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm a fan of it at a macro level too, because we talked about this before about how, Houston not being part of the Asian market for baseball was I think a big miss because we do have such a big Asian population in Houston that it seems like it could be a player where players that come from countries in Asia could feel comfortable. Obviously not LA for sure, although this guy doesn't like the Dodgers, which immediately, of course, sold him.
He said all the right things about the Dodgers and the Yankees.
He did.
If you want to be the Japanese Lance McCullers Jr. with better help, fingers crossed. He's made all the right statements. Let's put it that way. Nothing he has done so far is not going to endear him to the hardcore Astros fan.
Yeah. So it's just all in all, very, I think very, very exciting. And Jim Crane talking about really wanting to get in that market. And I think it was kind of neat. He talked about in the press conference how he essentially gave a floor to one of his businesses to the Astros to be the headquarters for that. So the Astros have had so much success with international players. It doesn't seem like a stretch that they can take that success and move it from not just Latin America, but into Asia as well.
Yeah, I mean, provided you hire the right people to run that part of your business, because the cultures are different. Obviously, just like the cultures in Latin America are different to what goes on in the U.S. It took the Astros being a pioneer and really hiring guys like Linares and other guys to get down there, really get ingratiated with the communities in those various countries like Venezuela, like the Dominican Republic, way before a lot of the other franchises in Major League Baseball did. Astros are a little bit behind the eight ball compared to some other organizations. But I think the idea that they are putting scouting efforts in Japan, but also in Korea, in the Taiwanese league, I believe I heard Jim Crane say.
Yeah.
All of those are positives because the search for talent is never ending. And if you can get these guys on, I don't want to say team-friendly contracts, but reasonable contracts compared to what the top free agent pitchers make in Major League Baseball, that's only good for the Astros. And the more you expose yourself to those markets, the more willing other players are to consider it. I would like to pick a bone with Brian McTaggart, though, because he kind of limited the Astros' exposure to the Japanese player to Kaz Matsui and his anal fissures back in the 2008, 2009 era. It completely ignores, and he brought up Yusei Kikuchi a little bit later, it completely ignored the contributions of one Nori Aoki
Absolutely.
in 2017 Houston Astros. Aoki has a World Series ring, so he must have been on the team, and is also Japanese. But Brian, do your research.
Yeah, in fact, I would have given him more of a. He had as big impact as far as our exposure to Japanese players as Kikuchi did. So I thought his omission it struck me funny as well, to be frank. But yeah, again, overall, what I also like about the idea, Andy, is that they have essentially now filled. Okay, you say a number 2, or I'm sorry, number 3 or number 4, but they filled that hole on a relatively team-friendly deal without giving up trade capital that's still out there. I still firmly believe that Dana Brown is still going to be cooking, and this team will continue to improve. I'm hearing a lot of stuff about Paredes perhaps being a trade bait, which I guess has to happen, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, if you can't move Walker, you have to move Paredes. You can't have an infield that's that crowded when you have holes everywhere else.
I mean, we're 34 days from pitchers and catchers reporting, and not that that's a real deadline in baseball, but you'd like to have your team fairly well settled by the time people start rolling into Florida, into Kissimmee. I know they don't play in Kissimmee anymore.
Kissimmee St. Cloud.
So, yeah, I think there has to be 1, maybe 2 more moves. I still believe Jake Myers is on the market somehow. I still believe that we're probably looking for bullpen help, especially if some of the things that I've seen about if you potentially move a Christian Walker, you're throwing in Brian Abreu to make the contract palatable for whoever takes him. You really need somebody like the Mets to come in and not care about what money they're spending to take Christian Walker's contract if that's where you're going to go. I think the reason Isak keeps getting mentioned is because he is the most attractive player that the Astros could market right now, short of going to a Jeremy Pena type, which the Astros are not doing. People should stop talking about that. That's not a thing that's going to happen. Carlos Correa is not moving back to shortstop.
Yeah.
All those things that this is not fantasy baseball. So Paredes makes the most sense because he's the most valuable player the Astros are probably willing to part with at this point. He's got 2 more years of control. He brings you back maybe that left-handed outfielder that you're longing for, maybe a better catcher, maybe more pitching. I don't know, but he's a guy that you probably get prospects and a major league starter for at this point, similar to what the Astros got when they acquired him. You've gone mute. So I will fill up the dead air by saying,
I don't know what happened there. I can't confirm that Carantini has downloaded Duolingo.
I can confirm that he was evidently at the Rockets game last night, meeting a potential new teammate. That's all I'm saying.
I am going to grind my gears about one thing before we before we move on to college football and then some other stuff. But listen, And I'm going to assume this started with that generic football team that lives down there in the Bayou City. I don't care which way you turn your hand. No one, Andy, outside of the people in the 713 area code think this is H-Town. If you show this to 10 sports fans, 9 of them are going to say this is Hook'em Horns or it's Matthew McConaughey during his style.
Nobody outside of Wisconsin thinks it's a good idea to wear cheese on your head, but that's a whole thing there. It was not a thing up until a couple of years ago, and then
because it's not a thing.
I think the Texas it is in Houston amongst a certain age group, and unfortunately, they're the age group that populates social media, so that's why it's kind of taken off. But the Texans tried to start it. It really took off because the Astros are very successful, and the Shooting Stars. I'm not going to use the name I used with you last night. Started doing it, and you see it in even because you attended a lot of games last year. Even the ads that the Astros run for their pro shop have a bunch of models throwing that gang sign around. I think it's dumb because I think most hand signs are dumb. And that's not even a jealousy thing because, my college has its own stupid little, who cares? Something about frogs in 1937. Anyway, I think this is literally one of these. It's going to be one of these old men yelling at clouds things for you because I don't think the kids are going to stop doing it for a while because they seem to like it.
I cannot see a self-respecting Aggie that's also a Houston Texans fan doing that.
But it's also the same group of kids that think we need to go to have black and white and red uniforms again because that's what they had when they were 5 or something like that. So I wouldn't put a lot of stock into what they have to say.
Well, I'm still going to be mad at it.
No, you should embrace your anger, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's stupid and it sucks. Hey, so transfer portal is moving not fast. I don't think that people fully understand that schools like Texas and Texas A&M and the Ohio States of the world, or even like or Alabama's or Georgia's, you're not going to see those teams sign players until later in the process because the guys they're after are big fish that are going to want to see what they can get off from at other schools. So they should not be panicking when A&M hasn't signed enough players, or I think Texas has finally signed a non-kicker with a defensive tackle and a tight end. So I still feel very steerish on the Longhorn possibilities of getting the wide receiver. It looks like Jaden Ball's not leaving Florida, so Texas is already visiting the Arizona State running back. So,
yeah, and Edwin Lacey is staying at Ole Miss. I know that was another guy that Texas was potentially targeting. A&M has made a little bit of a splash. They've signed 8 or 9 players. I've lost track overnight. They still are in the market for a couple of big guys, but we probably have room with the new 105 scholarship limit to sign 20 guys. So any school that's panicking right now about not getting the volume of players, it seems silly. A&M's taking a little bit different stance because what we're replacing right now through the portal is basically Elko's transition year. When you come on late and you don't really get to recruit high school players at all, and then you're kind of struggling because you have no relationships, blah, 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 blah. So you see replacement now happening at a higher level. I think that balances out over the next couple of years. But we needed to bolster the offensive line because we had a senior-laden line, and we've signed 2 or 3 and probably will sign another 2 before the day's out, or at least the week's out. But it's also, what is today? The 6th. The portal opened on the 2nd. And just because I've seen this confusion online, the 16th is the deadline. That's not the day that schools can stop signing kids. That's the day that kids can stop entering. I say kids because I'm 54. The players can stop entering, except for the 4 teams that are still playing in the playoffs. They'll have an extra week, maybe 10 days, depending on how math works. I'm not doing that for you. And those teams will have players that will go in the portal. There are still players that are weighing their options. So I think any panic from any fan base is premature. I also think shooting your wad, if we're living by the budgets that nobody's living by, blowing your wad in the first 5 days on a bunch of guys while we're not going to get Cam Coleman, we're not going to get this guy, so let's get 3 guys for the same amount of money. I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense. So schools like Texas, schools like Alabama, schools like depending on the situation, are going to hold their powder a little bit longer to see how things play out and then start making their moves. Different schools have different philosophies. Neither of them are necessarily bad. If you have needs and can fill them now, you should. But if you can have the ability to be more selective, that's probably the better play at some point. And I think it's just a matter of where you are in the growth cycle with your coach too. Sark's been there for, this is going to be his 6th year.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's different than a coach coming into his 2nd or 3rd year where you have more holes supposedly. So Texas fans need to not panic. Ketch also needs to stop praising this defensive tackle from Arkansas, who he was bad-mouthing most of this week that y'all played Arkansas for being big, fat, lard butt, which I guess Ketch would know about, big, fat, lard butts.
He is a big, fat, lard butt.
Because he owns mirrors.
What if he doesn't? Like, what if he had all of his mirrors irrationally removed from his house?
Because he convinced himself he's a vampire?
That's what he's like, yo, I can't be fat if I don't see myself.
He's Dorian Gray. I think his weekly visits to Pluckers would let him know that he's fat.
Probably.
I think being on the wall of fame at Pluckers should let you know that you've probably got an eating disorder at the very
worst part is he's probably on the wall of flame at multiple Pluckers.
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt about that.
Because it's not a national thing. It's per store. So,
and believe me, I would take some of that Pluckers advertising money if they want to come on the show and help us monetize. We'd be happy to take you. It's a superior product.
If I had to get through 25, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could get through 25 of like the what do they call their most hot ones? I don't know if I could do it.
I like the Dr. Pepper and then the gold one. Those are
Gold Rush. I'm a honey barbecue and a lemon pepper guy.
I like lemon pepper. I'd like them to do a little bit more butter so the lemon pepper sticks better. I have way too many thoughts about wings for somebody who can't eat more than 10 of them at a time anymore.
Yeah, you'd have those are definitely some specific opinions on those. But yeah, just the core of it being. It is now, but that has become the national sport. Free agency's not moving fast enough. Signing portal stuff's not moving fast enough. I do like the signings that Texas has made. I didn't know that Ketch was calling that due to lard butt, but
well, Ketch will say whatever Ketch needs to say. Like most people in his profession will say whatever he needs to say to get clicks and generate views. Whatever. I think our point is though. A school in the position of Texas who has holes to fill, but very specific holes to fill, has the time to wait for bigger fish. Some schools who have larger populations that they need to, get to a roster number at, they're going to move faster. And some schools just have the ability to spend money willy-nilly, I guess, if you're in Lubbock.
Well, that's the thing. So Lubbock just threw $5 million, which I hate that we're throwing around numbers. Because the numbers don't mean anything.
Well, and I would also caution people who listen that On3 is they're the people reporting that number, and I know other sites have run with it. They're usually kind of wildly off on their numbers, and it's always to the plus side. So, if it's 3, if it's 4, if it's 5, it doesn't matter. What matters is Cody Campbell and the group that he represents just paid a shit ton of money for a basically 500 level quarterback from Cincinnati. And that's an improvement over what they had. Yeah. I don't know if that money is well spent. We won't know until the season's over next year. But they are definitely players out there. And I guess when you have a group of 10 to 15 billionaires or 100 millionaires who really like a sports program at Texas Tech, that's what you're going to get. It's also what is required to get players to go to Lubbock.
Yeah, I find this Coleman guy. What's his name? The Texas Tech billionaire. Why do I keep wanting to go?
Cody Campbell.
Campbell. I find him interesting because on one hand he will bemoan to anybody that'll put a microphone in his face the state of college football today. while being in many ways the biggest perpetrator of what's wrong with college football today.
Well, save Olympic sports is his other thing, but also pay $1 million for a pitcher for softball, so the softball program is relevant for the first time.
Yeah, and can lose to Texas. So there's that. Because it turns out, Andy, you need to pay more than one player to be good at softball.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with football. They need to dramatically overhaul their offense because they scored no points against Oregon, right? I mean, there's no points. Texas Tech has more billboards in Times Square today than points scored in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I it's funny to me. The whole thing is just funny to me that there is a I give the guy props for taking an opportunity because there's a sliver of wild west time, so it's appropriate that he's at Texas Tech. Yeah, to run with it. There will be at some point some regulation and things like that, but
I don't begrudge him anything. I think he's kind of a blowhard, but at the same time, if A&M had a guy like that or 10 guys like that, I wouldn't be crying about it.
No. And the thing is that Texas and Texas A&M do have those guys. They're not just such a rarity that they get interviewed on ESPN.
Well, like lasagna, real gangsters are silent. It's the G.
Oh.
I think basically what I mean by that is most of the guys who back Texas and back A&M, with a few exceptions, have their money and know how to keep quiet about it because they don't necessarily need to publicize how they're spending their money. I don't know that Cody Cable has that gene.
Yeah.
And good for him. That's how he wants to spend his money. And again, I wish A&M had some guys that were like that. Red McCombs used to be like that for Texas because not that he was necessarily spending $5 million on a quarterback, but if the program needed something, he'd get it for the program and make sure that everybody knew he got it for the program.
Oh, but then they hired Charlie Strong and he got pissed off.
Well, he's a defensive coordinator or something.
Yeah. Well, he's also
a little racist. A little bit racist.
He was because he was black. There we go. Hey, there is some entertainment news a little bit. I don't have the biggest problem with Kathleen Kennedy's job at Lucasfilm. I think she had a really tough gig. But Dave Filoni is taking over, which, this sounds like one of those things, Andy, that's going to be just destined to blow up in their faces because Dave Filoni is the one that all the fans want until he does something they don't like.
So everything that's ever happened in the Star Wars universe ever?
Right. Well, there was already some misgivings about Kathleen Kennedy because, oh my God, how can a woman know Star Wars? Instead of looking at her IMDb and looking at all the classics she produced, but whatever, just ignore those. But yeah, I mean, Star Wars is in a weird spot because of the Acolyte wasn't well received, and the last movie was not great. But do you have any take on this whole Dave Filoni taking over?
I mean, beyond the misogyny about the Kathleen Kennedy and the job she did, it is not a stretch to say that The Rise of Skywalker was a disappointing film in a few different ways. And I think the bigger issue is that most of the things that have come out since then have been fair to middling. I mean, they've had some successes, obviously, with The Mandalorian, and just as many failures. And that's on Kennedy's watch. With Filoni, I think it's probably going to end up being a mistake for the fans to get their way because the fans are very often wrong. I also think anything tied to Disney at this point has some problems because I don't know that Disney itself has a clear direction about what they want to do with any of their big franchises. Since Disney Plus especially went live, we've seen the MCU struggle to find footing in that new world. We've seen Star Wars, that franchise, struggle to find footing in that world, trying to bridge between movies and a streaming service. you get to this point where it almost feels more so on Marvel than on Star Wars, but still to some extent, it's like homework you have to do to enjoy the entire thing. And that, bogs down people. And then you have, the issues that Disney has publicly with the Jimmy Kimmel stuff and everything else. I think it's hurt some of the franchises that they own. I wish good things for Dave Filoni. I hope that he has the ability to right the ship in a way that is both commercially successful, that the core fans like, but is still something that my wife is going to want to watch, who is a friend Star Wars fan. I think that's been the issue, is that there is no outreach anymore to Joe Public as far as Star Wars goes. It's become very niche. And unfortunately, when it became very niche, even that hardcore Star Wars fan didn't like the niche product. It's less accessible, I guess, and that's made it less successful. So I hope Filoni can right the ship. I have my doubts that he can, because I think I think the fan base wanting him kind of proves that all he's going to do is give them the same of what they've always asked for, which isn't necessarily great for the growth of the universe.
Which is just spin-offs of the Clone Wars.
But that's, you can only do that so many times.
Well,
and that fan base is remarkably fickle. So the second he does anything that they find even remotely questionable, they're going to turn on him too.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is it probably is a job that you really, really want, but you really don't at the same time. I'm also very concerned, though, about
he's the Kalen. He's going to be the Kalen. Well, I guess Kathleen Kennedy is the Kalen DeBoer, but you don't want to be the guy that follows the guy.
You don't want to be the guy. No, but there's even concern now with, you're starting to see stories coming out of the Warner Brothers thing, and James Gunn talking about, well, I don't know how much longer I can keep up the pace I'm keeping up, but it almost wonders if part of that's going to be corporate pressure, since Netflix is if they buy Warner Brothers, is talking about a 17-day theatrical window.
I mean, I guess it all depends on who you want to believe, because in any of these cases, the ultimate goal is consolidation, right? I tend to side with Netflix a little bit more than with Paramount as far as the deal. And I understand both sides of it, at least I think I do, because it's pretty complicated. But Paramount has a interest in keeping the theatrical release schedule the way it works now. Netflix doesn't necessarily have that. However, Netflix doesn't have a theatrical distribution system, and so Warner Brothers serves that purpose in a lot of ways. They can have their 14 to 15 releases, and Warner Brothers is really financially successful right now, which is why they're being desired.
Sure.
But they put out movies that make money. How that affects, beyond a 17-day window, or is a 30-day window, or how that works. I do like the fact, I don't love that, but I do like the fact that Netflix has publicly stated a number of times that Warner Brothers will be operated as an independent entity, at least for the time being. The same people who are in charge now will be in charge after Netflix completes the purchase, if that's what happens. With Paramount, I think that timeline accelerates. And I'm not naive enough to think that there won't be job losses and that Netflix won't have say over what happens at Warner Brothers. That's not how this would work. But I think if Paramount wins that bid, that timeline is accelerated, because it will take about a year for Paramount to go, we don't need 2 marketing departments. We don't need 2 accounting departments. We don't need this union and that union, because we can just combine these things and remove the redundancy and save money for our shareholders.
Yeah, we're just buying a logo and an IP. We're not buying a whole.
Yeah. So I'm glad that so far Ellison and his team haven't had the best cash deal yet. I assume there's going to be another deal coming soon. I probably siding with Netflix, but at the end of the day, it's probably the best of 2 bad options. Just for the idea of making film in this country, I think it's really the world. I mean, let's be honest. I know that Bollywood has its film industry. I know that China has its own film industry, but the American film industry is what drives that for the entire globe. And when you start limiting the ability for filmmakers to make film because there is one studio less, that's ultimately problematic.
It's bad for everybody. And just as a selfish fan, I worry. I'm really like the track that James Gunn is on, and I would hate to see. Not only would it allow Snyder fan to continue to run his mouth on the internet, but I like the track that we're on with James Gunn's DC universe, and I don't want to see it interrupted over something silly like Netflix cutting costs because we're not relying on theatrical revenue.
I really want Supergirl to be good. I really want Supergirl to do well. I think it's going to be good. I want it to do well.
I think it has to do well. I think it's a linchpin. I really do. I think it has to do well.
Hi, William G. Chandler Jr.
Hello.
Comments?
Yeah. So, I guess last thing, man.
What last thing? We have not talked about Texas's impressive win over Meat Chicken.
Have we not talked about that yet?
No, we haven't had a show since then.
Oh, we haven't. Well, then you know what? Then I'll say
I could let this go.
I'll save my last theme for Friday. It was an impressive win, frankly.
I would like to give Arch Manning his flowers because I think that more than anything that's happened so far this season, that was a coming out game. He looked for the first time most of the year, even with the win against A&M at the end of the season, the first time that I saw Arch Manning play 4 good quarters in a row.
Well, and I thought too, he looked beat up at the game. He bloody whole thing. I think he definitely looked like it had. Obviously, we'll see what those vibes were like, but it felt not dissimilar to we had used the Rose Bowl of 2004 as an example.
We have said this.
It had similar vibes. In my old age, other things become more important, and I do think that Arch played great. I think 20 scholarship players were not suited up for the Longhorns in that game. Losing your top 2 receivers to injury and making do with a bunch of guys was
some of which are no longer on your team.
Some of which are not even on the team. One for the NFL and one because he decided to misrepresent his NIL recruitment with the university. But what's that?
It's out of his control.
Out of his control. I was only offered 6 digits. I expected 7. Well, then I guess that is out of your control.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to admit, though, the way he wrote that tweet, it made it sound like he got a talk from Sark that said, "You're not welcome here anymore."
I think the reality is somewhere, like
that's
I told
what he wanted people to think.
Oh, 100%. But I think the reality is somewhere in the middle of he definitely got a contract offer. I think that's been confirmed. It probably was not the level he thought it should be. But I also think there was probably a conversation with Livingston, like there is with a good majority of players on all college rosters these days, that we've talked about this a number of times. Hey, these are the things you're going to have to get better at, or you're going to get passed up.
Yeah.
And we got offer. And I know with Texas's situation, you've got 3 5-star wide receivers out of this last freshman class, or the one incoming combined, that on paper are going to be better than that receiver.
And you might be throwing $5 million at Cam Coleman. I mean, you might.
And there's a lot of money tied up in those receivers. Even taking you out of the Cam Coleman sweepstakes for a minute, because I think we're going to win it. But you've got a lot of money tied up in the wide receiver room. You're still willing to give him, I don't know what the final number is, but a significant amount of money. But it was step up or you're welcome to graduate from here.
Yeah.
And that is what happens when you start paying players above board, is those conversations. And those conversations have happened throughout the history of football, except what it used to be was you're going to medically retire.
Well, frankly, those conversations should happen. But I felt the entire way he misrepresented himself. And then for it, and it just kind of shows you the fallacy of youth when it wasn't like that, like the real story wasn't going to immediately come out. No, there was an offer on the table, and that offer stayed on the table, and you walked away from it. The offer was never rescinded.
I think if anything, a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds should absolutely understand that there is no decorum anymore. There is no discretion is the better part of valor. That's not a thing that we do anymore. So if you say something, somebody else is going to respond and not just let it go. So when you make a claim that you've been run out of a program, the program is going to turn around and say, well, no, that's not exactly true, whether it's direct or through their intermediaries. And Bobby Burton is one of their intermediaries.
One of the things that I would like to say about the closing part of the game, I mean, again, I think the game, I said this in my TikTok, you can call that game meaningless all you want, but those players really did leave it all on the field. It got chippy at times, but my grandson, and even mostly through my baseball, I have a very emotional relationship with sports, and you can remember growing up, Andy, your first sports heroes. And so it's been kind of cool that my grandson has become such an Arch Manning fan. He got an Arch Manning jersey for Christmas and he hasn't taken it off. He probably should let his mom wash that, but I'll have a hygiene conversation when I see him in the spring. But the story of Arch, like stopping his celebration to go sit with Bryce Underwood on the sideline after the game, I think it was more than the handshake in the middle of the field. There's actually a similar story to him and Marcel Reed talking after the A&M game. Like, to me, seeing actual sportsman moments like that make me hopeful that you're still going to see good athletes coming out of sports that aren't just going to be all about what's right in front of them. And I think I'm glad that he's Braxton's favorite player. And I thought the Marcel Reed Arch Manning story was great, and I think the Bryce Underwood story is great as well. So for me, that was kind of two things I really took out of that game that I was really impressed with.
Well, I hope for Braxton it doesn't turn out that Arch Manning turns into a grumpy old man like one of my first baseball heroes, Nolan Ryan. It really has taken some of the shine off that apple. And evidently he was a grumpy old man when he was 30.
So as long as Arch doesn't transfer, we don't have to worry about deciding who his alma mater is.
If he bounces, between two pro franchises forever.
Yeah. I guess you're right. That could be a real bummer.
I'll stick with J.R. Richard then.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I mean, yes. Bringing that game up, it was, I think as good as you can ask for. Obviously you'd rather be in the playoff, but I think, Texas now, when Texas is ranked really high and Arch is ranked really high, I won't feel the way I did at the beginning of last year and feel like it was unearned. I think that there will be a real reason for them to be a top 5 preseason team.
Yeah. I mean, other than somebody being gun shy over how last season started, there's no reason that this year Arch being mentioned as the Heisman favorite or one of the top 3, however that's going to work out at the beginning of the year, there's some meat behind it now. So it feels like something that is a lot more tangible and palatable. And that should be motivation for him rather than something that might be an intimidation factor or I'm trying too hard thing and I think there was some of that at the beginning of the season. There was also just growing up in the speed of the game when you're the guy. He's played that season. So I would, barring injury or something really weird happening, start going to the Raiders and drafting Mark Manning number 1,
or Warby Parker changing his prescription.
That's also a thing.
Yeah, it could happen. Yeah, and I guess my last thought too before we get out of here on the Coleman sweepstakes. I feel really good about Texas's chances. I think you feel really good about A&M's chances. I will say that
really good about their chances, which is because they have cash.
Well, I was about to say, yeah, Tech probably feels pretty good about anything at this point. Oh my God, if he goes to Tech, I don't even know. But I think what the other thing to people to remember is, Texas and Texas A&M are going to be fine because Coleman wouldn't even be the number 1 receiver, I don't think, on either team. Maybe on Texas A&M. I don't think he'd be on A&M. I think Concepcion would still be.
Well, Concepcion declared for the draft, but Mario Carver is back, and he's. I think that
he's going to be a guy, not the guy. Both schools are going to be fine. Whoever.
Cam Coleman's really, really good, and I think anybody signing him and paying him what he's going to command is going to expect him to be a top performer. I don't think either of our schools have to have him. It's more like the cherry on top of the sundae sort of thing. He's going to improve whatever room he's in, but neither college program is going to fold if he signs with one or the other, or with Tech, or I guess with Alabama, because they're now back in it. USC bowed out, or he bowed out of USC.
That's all the neighborhood.
As of last night, he's visiting.
He didn't even visit OSU.
He spent a day and a half in Austin. He spent a day and a half, or almost 2 days, in College Station. Left yesterday. Is supposed to go to Tech today. And there's some feeling that he's got a visit scheduled to Alabama after that, just so he can leave Tech without signing anything, because I want to see all the schools, which is probably wise on his part.
Do you think you really think he might end up at Tech? You think there's a real shot at that?
I think if Tech doubles I think Tech could outspend both our schools should they choose to, because I do think there is some point where both Sark and Elko look, we've got whatever that dollar amount is, $50 million. I just make up a number. Yeah. We've got $50 million. I'm not allocating 10% of it to one guy.
We have and that gets down to, because when you do that, you feel desperate.
Yeah. Whereas at Tech, I think that they're, whatever their limit is, I don't think they're paying attention to it anyway, but I don't think they've got guys in their roster making nothing.
Yeah.
And they need an offensive upgrade, but I really think it comes down to one of our two schools. And like I said, we both like our chances.
Well, and I think if your school doesn't get it, stay off the internet, because the hyperbole is going to be the hyperbole of, oh, look at you guys must suck from your school. And then if my school doesn't get it, we didn't really want him anyway. All that soon is going to become just ridiculous. So I would suggest, if you're a reasonable minded human being, to avoid that at all cost.
I will say this about the transfer portal: as much as I don't like what it's become, it is high school recruiting on steroids, because it is basically a 2-week window of things. There is no drawn out, hey, it was a good visit, he'll come back for an official in October. No, you're signing somebody who's going to be on your campus the second week or third week of January and playing in spring ball and on your roster ostensibly. It moves very fast. So it is something that can command your attention if you're into that sort of thing. It's a lot more fun than high school recruiting is these days.
Yeah. Well, because of it's kind of killed high school recruiting, right? Last thing though, Andy, it is January 6th. It's the 5-year anniversary. So remember to reach out to all your racist relatives and give them wish them a happy anniversary.
I put out my ivermectin this morning for insurrection.
There you go. For the January 6th Shaman. You got to love him. All right. Andy.
Better than the ghost of Ashley Babbitt showing up at your house.
It is.
Because she's still drunk.
All right. For Andy, I'm Jim. This has been Off Day with Ballpark Nation. I'm going to show you guys the intro again. I'm that proud of it.